A man is on his knees in front of the Avatar, begging, not for his life. The Avatar doesn't take lives anymore. He's begging to keep his bending, the fire he was born with, the one thing that ever made him who he is. The Avatar is patient about it, almost kind. Then he presses 2 fingers to the man's forehead and the fire goes out, forever. One moment he's a firebender. The next, he's just a man who used to be one. The crowd watches. Nobody moves. Nobody ever does. This is Aang, the gentlest soul who ever lived. The monk who refused to kill the worst man in the world when he had every reason to. And he came back, reborn, carrying every memory of his first life, every war, every grave, every time being good cost him everything. And he made one calm, reasoned decision. The world doesn't need a protector. It needs to be controlled. The terrifying part isn't that he turned evil, it's that he might be right. Here's how he got there. Go back to the moment everyone calls his greatest. Energy bending is older than the 4 elements, older than the Avatar himself. Before anyone bent water or fire, they bent the energy inside their own bodies. The lion turtle who gave this power to Aang gave him one warning with it. To bend another person's energy, your own spirit has to be unbendable. If it isn't, you don't just fail. You're corrupted, destroyed. Watch that final fight again. When Aang reached into Ozai and tore his firebending out, Ozai's energy did not go quietly. For one heartbeat, it pushed back and it almost won. Aang's spirit nearly bent first. Here's the part the story never tells you. Aang's spirit was never fully unbendable. He had refused to open his last chakra. He couldn't let go of the one person he loved, so the gate stayed shut. By the lion turtle's own rule, the boy least ready to bend a soul did it anyway. Something stayed behind. Not a spirit, not a curse. One quiet conviction that was never his, buried too deep to feel. Ozai's last thought, still warm. Strength is the only mercy that lasts. Aang won the war that day. He never noticed he had lost something too. Nobody did. Normally, this is where the story ends. The Avatar dies. The Avatar is reborn. The world gets a clean start. That is the one rule nobody breaks. A new Avatar is not born remembering. Past lives are not memories you keep. They are a connection, a thread running back through Ryava to everyone who came before. Death cuts that thread clean. The next Avatar begins as a blank child in the next nation, learning the world from nothing. And after an airbender, the cycle turns to water. The next Avatar should have been a baby in the Southern Water Tribe, a stranger. Someone who would never know Aang's name, let alone his grief. That is not what happened. The corruption Ozai left behind acted like an anchor. When Aang was struck down inside the Avatar state, the cycle should have moved on, or shattered for good. Roku had warned him once, die in that state, and the whole line of Avatars can simply end. It almost happened to Korra, when her bond to every past life was ripped out of her and destroyed. Aang's soul didn't move on. It didn't let go. It held. He came back. Same soul, same memories, the same airbending boy, born again where a Water Tribe Avatar should have been. And that alone should have told the world that something had gone deeply wrong. The cycle was built to hand the world a clean slate. This time it handed the world a witness, a boy who remembered every grave and had already begun deciding who dug them. A child should not be able to do the math Aang did, but he had 100 years of memory and a lifetime of regret. And before most children learn to run, he had started adding it all up. His first answer was the hardest one. Mercy was the original sin. He remembered Roku, a past life, and once a friend to a boy named Sozin. Roku beat Sozin, had him cold, and chose to let him live. That one act of mercy bought the world a 100-year war and the murder of an entire people. Kindness, Aang decided, was just cruelty with a delay. You would see what that belief became. A warlord on his knees in front of the Avatar, certain the gentle monk would forgive him. He doesn't. The Avatar takes his bending and walks away before the man has finished his sentence. Then Aang counted his own dead. He remembered running. He remembered the ice. He remembered waking a century too late to silent temples and to Gyatso's bones resting on a heap of the soldiers he had died fighting. The air nomads were gone. All of them. And the verdict wrote itself. Every grave was the price of his gentleness. He had been kind, and his whole world paid for it. You can find him now in a rebuilt air temple. Perfect. Empty. He does not look proud. He looks like a man standing watch over a grave. The strangest part is that his past lives had told him all of this already. Roku told him to be decisive. Kyoshi told him she had killed a man and called it the only road to peace. Kuruk told him to seize his own destiny. Even Yangchen, an air nomad like him, told him to do whatever it took to protect the world, whatever it cost his own soul. Young Aang had found a loophole around every one of them. The reborn Aang looked at that loophole and finally named it cowardice. And when he enters the Avatar state now, you can see the change. The glow comes out wrong. The voice answering from inside it is not the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes. It is the rage finally allowed to speak. So he reached the last conclusion left standing. If mercy ends the world, then mercy is the enemy. The only moral act left is control. Total. Absolute. A world where no Sozin can rise, no Ozai can burn a nation, no genocide can begin, because no one is ever left strong enough to start one. He did not lose his compassion. He sharpened it into a blade. He had seen with his own eyes exactly what love without force protects. Nothing at all. So he kept the love, and he added the force. Every tyrant before him ruled with fear. Aang ruled with something quieter and far worse. He ruled with subtraction. He never needed an army. He had the one power no one else in history could use, and he knew exactly what to do with it. He could reach into a person and pull their bending out by the root, not block it, not bind it for a night, unmake it, the same way he once unmade Fire Lord Ozai. Back then, the world called it mercy, a way to end a monster without ending a life. Aang remembered it differently. He remembered it as the most useful thing he had ever done. So he turned the exception into the law. Picture it. A firebender defies him. He does not die. He wakes one morning and the fire is simply gone. The thing he was born with, the thing his bloodline carried for 1,000 years, erased like it never existed. No body, no grave, no martyr for a banner. Just an ordinary man standing where a dangerous one used to be. They still tell a story about the early days. A young earthbender, barely more than a boy, spat at the Avatar's feet and told him the people would never kneel. Aang knelt instead. He put a hand on the boy's shoulder, almost gently, and said, "You're right. They won't have to." The boy never bent again. He walked home that night and could not lift a single pebble for the rest of his life. The village understood. The villages always do. Over the years, the unmade became a class of their own. You could pick them out by the way they held themselves, by the small hollowness of someone still reaching for a power that no longer answers. They did not rebel. You cannot build an army out of people who have forgotten how to be a threat. They became a living warning, walking proof of what the Avatar could do to anyone, anytime, with 2 fingers and a steady hand. When subtraction was not enough, he still had the Avatar state, but it did not look the way it used to. When the old Aang glowed, you watched 1,000 lifetimes move through one body. Roku, Kyoshi, Kuruk, every Avatar who ever lived, lending him their strength. When this Aang glows, the light comes out bruised, and the thing speaking through him is not a council of the dead, it is the rage. Ozai's old certainty, finally given a god to wear, and the world kept waiting for the monster behind it. There wasn't one. No dark spirit, no Vatu, no ancient evil in his ear, no curse to break. They waited for the demon they could name and blame and someday undo, and the demon never came. This was just Aang, with the brakes cut. The darkness never crawled into him from the spirit world. It was always a decision, and he finally agreed to make it. He stopped drawing lines, too. His own wife had outlawed an art once. The worst thing a waterbender could ever learn. The power to reach inside a living body and move it like a puppet against its own will. The old Aang would not have touched it to save his life. This Aang was a master of all 4 elements, water among them, and he stopped pretending some weapons were beneath him. If a thing could keep the peace, he used it. The boy who once refused to take a single life now held the most violating power a bender could hold, and he held it without a flicker of doubt. He had decided, long ago, that doubt was exactly how the last 100 years of graves got dug. And it worked. That was the unbearable part. Walk through one of his cities. You will not find the nightmare you are bracing for. You will find clean streets and full markets, children who have never heard a war drum, who have no word for famine, guards standing idle because no one would dare and no one has the means to try. Crime did not fall under Aang. It ended. Rebellions are not crushed because they never form. The men who might have led them are not benders anymore, and the ones who still are have learned to be grateful and quiet. By every number you could measure, it is the safest the world has ever been. It is also the most caged. No one had warned them about this kind of peace. In Aang's hands, peace stopped being something a people build together. It became something one man does to them. He decided who was strong. He decided who was safe to stay that way. He decided which fires kept burning and which went dark some quiet morning. A whole world lived under the shadow of a gentle, soft-spoken, smiling boy who loved them far too much to ever let them be free. They got their 1,000 years of peace. They only had to hand him the world to get it and agree never to ask for it back. A cage like that has only one weakness: the people who knew the boy before he built it. And there were 4 of them left in the world who had never stopped looking for him inside it. There was a question no one would say aloud, and everyone carried anyway. Was there any of the old Aang left in there at all? The people who had to answer it were the ones who had loved him most. That was the cruelty of how this ended. The Avatar was not brought down by an enemy. He was brought down by his own family, one heartbreak at a time. Start with Katara. For 100 years, she was the one thing that could reach him. When grief or rage swallowed the boy whole and the Avatar state took him, it was never a sword or a plan that brought him back. It was her voice, her hand on his arm in the desert, her arms around him in the ruins of his own people's temple. She was the calm at the center of him, the only person alive who could talk the storm back into a child. Now she reaches for him, and the door is locked from the inside. What breaks her is simple, and she turns it over every night. He still loves her. That never changed. She can still get closer to him than anyone alive because he would never raise a hand against her, because some buried, stubborn piece of him still softens when she walks into a room. She is the one crack in the armor. She is also the only loss that could still reach the boy underneath. The thing that doomed him, that he could never let her go, is the only thing left that might bring him back. Or end him. Then there is Zuko. A long time ago, Zuko was so afraid of becoming his father that he made Aang promise something terrible. "If I ever turn into him," he said, "if I ever become a tyrant, you end me." Aang swore he would. Neither of them ever imagined the promise would be needed the other way around. Now the Fire Lord, the man who clawed his way out of his family's evil, has to stand against the Avatar who taught him it was possible. Zuko spent his whole life learning that people can change, that the worst man you know can choose to be better. Now he has to watch the best man he ever knew prove the reverse, the kindest soul alive, choosing to be the worst with a clear conscience. The student has to become the teacher's executioner. Toph does not flinch. She had fought Aang before years ago, back when it was practice and the ground shook for fun. She knows what it feels like to stand across from him. And she is the only one who looks at what he has become and does not see a friend to save. She sees a threat to stop. While Katara grieves the boy and Zuko agonizes over a promise, Toph says the thing no one else can stand to. "He's gone," she tells them. "And if you keep waiting for him to come back, he's going to bury all of us." The terrible part is that she is probably right. And being right is its own kind of grief, because somebody had to be the first to stop hoping, and it fell to her. So they come for him, not like heroes sure of themselves, like people walking toward a funeral they will have to hold for someone still breathing. It is nothing like the battles you remember. No triumphant music, no clean trade of blows building to a win. These fights are heavier than that because the most horrifying thing about Aang is not his power, it is his restraint. He could end any of them in a heartbeat. He doesn't. He keeps choosing the cage over the grave as if mercy were something he still believed in, twisted now into the right to decide who gets to stay themselves. They keep searching his face for the boy they knew. A flicker, a crack, anything. Sometimes they almost find it, a softness in the eyes. A half second where the monk who refused to kill seems to look back at them. Then it folds away under that calm, certain quiet, and they are left wondering if they saw it at all or only saw what they needed to. That question does not get answered. Not until the very end. Not until the one moment it costs everything to know. In the end, it came down to exactly who you think. Her. When they finally cornered him, no weapon opened the door. Katara did. She got closer than anyone else could because he let her, because some part of him would always let her. And she said the thing she had held for years, not a threat, not a plea for the world, just his name and the boy it used to belong to. For 1 second, he hesitated. That was all they needed. 1 second where the certainty cracked and the storm behind it stalled. In that gap, they did the only thing the laws of this world allowed. They struck him down inside the Avatar state. What that means is the cruelest part of the whole story. Kill the Avatar in the Avatar state, and you do not just kill a man, you kill the cycle. The thread that runs back through every life before him and forward into every life that should have come after, cut for good. No next Avatar. No Water Tribe child born with the weight of the world. No earth, no fire, no air to follow. To free themselves from what Aang had become, they had to end the Avatar itself, forever. And in his last moment, with the glow dying out of his eyes, something came back. Not the rage, not Ozai's certainty. For the first time in a lifetime, the boy surfaced. The monk who flew on a ball of air and refused to take a single life. The child who chose mercy once when the whole world begged him not to. He looked at the people who had loved him and at what he had done to the world he was meant to protect. What crossed his face was not defiance. It was relief. He knew what he had become. Being stopped was the only mercy anyone had managed to give him in a very long time. Then he was gone. And so was every Avatar who would ever have come after him. Count the cost. Count the benders he unmade, the lives hollowed out and handed back empty. Count the decade of silent, perfect, captive peace. Count the friends who had to choose between loving him and ending him, who will carry that choice to their own graves. And count the highest price of all. A world that saved itself by losing the one spirit meant to keep it in balance, because the guardian of balance had become the thing balance needed protection from. He set out to build a world where no one would ever suffer the way he had. He succeeded in the only way a man like that ever could. He stopped the suffering by making the world too afraid, too small, and too broken to feel anything at all. Go back to where we started. A man on his knees in front of the Avatar, begging to keep the one thing that made him who he was. And the Avatar, calm and gentle and certain, taking it anyway. That image is the whole story. Aang did not fall the way villains are supposed to fall. He was not seduced by power. He did not lose his mind, or his heart, or his soul to some darkness creeping in from outside. He fell because, after 100 years of grief and a lifetime of being told he was too soft for the world, he finally agreed with everyone who had ever told him to be strong. And he was not entirely wrong. He was right about the cost of being good. Right that his mercy bought a war. Right that his gentleness had a body count. Right that the world really does punish the kind. He saw the price of his own goodness more clearly than anyone ever had. He was only wrong about everything that made it worth paying. That is the real tragedy of an Avatar reborn with his memories. Not that he forgot who he was, that he remembered too well and let the worst day of his life teach him the wrong lesson, forever. Somewhere, in another version of this story, he never came back at all. He stayed the boy who let go. Maybe we'll find him there next time.